Hey brothers, welcome back to the Better Dads Club podcast. Today's conversation is one I've been wanting to have for a long time. I'm joined by Allan Harvey from Kids Need Dads. This is a New Zealand charity that's been supporting separated parents for more than 30 years. If you're navigating separation, mediation, co-parenting, or simply wondering what your role and responsibilities are as a father after separation, then this episode is packed with practical advice. We cover everything from mediation and father's responsibilities under the New Zealand law to child support, rebuilding trust, staying connected with your kids, and why community is one of the most important things a separated dad can have. And before we jump in, if you are enjoying the podcast and you'd like to stay connected, head over to the Better Dads Club website and sign up to our newsletter. You'll be the first to hear about new podcast episodes, upcoming events, workshops, and coaching programs, all designed to help you become a better dad. In the meantime, here's my conversation with Allan Harvey from Kids Need Dads. Well, Allan, good evening. Welcome along to the Better Dads Club podcast. How are you this evening?
Great, Tom. Yep, it's been a good day today and looking forward to our chat.
Fantastic. Me too. Thank you for being here, man.
No problems.
This is one of the more practical conversations that I've been really wanting to have, mainly because this, part of my journey has been working with you through Kids Need Dads and obviously helping with mediation and getting through that co-parenting phase of how do we sort things out. So, I mean, firstly, thank you for the work that you do, and also thank you for helping me as well. You've been I want to say a lifesaver.
We all need help from time to time.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, we do. Where has Kids Need Dads come from, and what led you to being involved with them?
Okay, so Kids Need Dads started about 30 years ago, and it was an organisation in those days called Father and Child Trust. So it was focused on interactions between dads and their kids. And that's where we started 30 odd years ago. About 26, 27 years ago, another organisation was present as well called the Union of Fathers. And it was pretty disgruntled about what was happening in the family courts in New Zealand. And there were lots of groups around the country which were unhappy about what was happening in family courts. And it was trying to bring those groups together, hence the name union, and try and have them work together to see about getting some changes in the court processes and the way that things happened in court. Because in those days, things like shared care and dads getting a significant chunk of time with their kids was a rarity. So those two groups merged in about 2015, and they merged under the banner of Kids Need Dads. So it is basically, what the label on the can. We're about kids, and we're about kids having dads that are active in their lives. Having said that, we are a parenting support charity, and we support all parents, and we also do a bit of work with grandparents as well. So we have got some mums that we're actively supporting, and we've got some grandparents. But most of the people that come and see us are dads, and that's where our core work is.
Right on. And so were you involved in those organizations prior to the amalgamation?
So, yep, I've been involved in Kids Need Dads and its forerunner, the Union of Fathers, for 24 years this year. And so I've been there for a long time. I'm the old man of the organization now.
Okay. So what was going on at the time? What were some of the things that you guys were seeing, what you were dealing with?
Yep. So in 2002, I had my own separation, and I probably didn't handle that particularly well. It was a surprise to me. When I look back on it now, I can kind of see there were some signs as that why it shouldn't have been as much of a surprise to me. But it was in those days, and I felt that my parenting was challenged unreasonably and unfairly. And that annoyed me. And the court process is unfortunately a truly broken process. So it's not until you end up in there and find that, everybody's battling against a bit of a brick wall, and it's very much a system, and it takes time, and it's not quick. And so thankfully, I met some other guys those days in Union of Fathers, and since in Kids Need Dads. And I'm trying to help other people come to terms with the system and see that they can do a better role of being active in their kids' lives from early on in separation going forward.
Why is the system so broken or skewed?
Well, a lot of it's just a lack of resources. So if you make an application into the family court at the moment, you'll be lucky to be through the court in a year's time. And that really doesn't work. And if we're thinking that, we've got kids that say are a year of age, in a year's time, they're 2 years of age. Half of their life has been spent while parents are arguing in court. Or, if they're, 3 or 4 years of age and, they're there for 2 years and they're 5 or 6 years of age. They're quite different people from, a 3 or 4 year old to a 5 or 6 year old. And if mum and dad haven't been able to get their act together and sort things out for themselves, and they're reliant on using the court to help them with that, it's difficult, and there aren't a lot of resources for the court system to try and hurry these things up. I'm also active in running parenting through separation courses. I'm active in trying to encourage people into mediation. I'm active in trying to have people see if they can work things out for themselves. It's not about rights and wrongs in many ways. It's about how do we get over ourselves as adults? How do we focus on our kids? And how do we do what's best for our kids rather than arguing about adult stuff with our other co-parent?
So how does Kids Need Dads actually help?
Okay, so Kids Need Dads, the part of Kids Need Dads I'm largely involved in is what we call dad's care or parents' care. I'm actively working sometimes one-on-one or sometimes in a group. We hold groups every week and trying to encourage parents to talk to each other, to focus on their kids, to discuss their cases and learn from other parents about better ways to go forward for their kids. We also provide some education. We've got a couple of education programs, a Discovering Fatherhood program. We've got another anger management program as well. We're also looking at communication issues. So those are important education streams that we've got. The biggest uptake for people in our fathering program and in our anger management programs, people that are serving sentences in prison or on remand in prison. And, it's pretty dead time for those guys. And so, that's a good way for them to positively use their time. And then once they get out, they can be involved with us in trying to better their situation in the community as well. We also provide supervised contact services, and that's a really good avenue when there is some safety concerns or questions are being raised about somebody's parenting. We take the view that any contact is good contact. And so get on with having contact with your kids. And once you've got some contact happening, you can build more contact from there. And then a small amount of our work is what we just label as basically fun activities. And that's doing things in the community. We try and have an impact on Father's Day and offer some Father's Day activities. We also have done Children's Days activities in March as well. And there's a variety of other times when we can see an opportunity in the community to do things together, have a sausage sizzle, get a bunch of parents and kids down to the park, do things together. It's good. And it's wonderful to see kids with smiles on their face spending time with mum and dad, or mum or dad. That's the thing that really I enjoy. I'm a passionate dad myself. I've got 2 kids of my own. I've got a stepson as well, and I've got 6 grandchildren. So that's an important part of my life, and that helps me focus on what's good for me and what's good for my grandkids and for my kids.
Hey guys, did you know that doing more core exercises doesn't necessarily mean you're building a stronger core? In fact, many people jump straight into planks, crunches, and other abdominal exercises before they've learned how to activate the deep muscles that stabilize the spine and the pelvis. Those exercises might give you a burn. They might even build stronger looking six-pack muscles. But if your deep stabilizing muscles aren't switching on first, your body can develop compensation patterns that reduce efficiency and in many people contribute to ongoing aches, discomfort, or lower back problems, especially as we get older. Your core isn't just there to make your abs look good. It's the foundation for literally every movement you make. Walking, running, lifting, playing with your kids, even standing up from a chair. I've been a personal trainer for over 17 years, and since I started working alongside physiotherapists early in my career, I've used one simple tool to assess and train these deep stabilizing muscles, and it's called the Pelvic Pro Core Trainer. The Core Trainer gives you immediate visual feedback so you can actually see whether your deep core muscles are working properly. And that means you're not guessing, you're learning how to activate the muscles that help support your spine before you move. It's something I use myself and I prescribe to every client I work with because I believe that how you move is more important than what you move. And when your foundations are solid, everything else becomes easier. You move with more confidence, you reduce unnecessary compensation, and you're building strength on top of a foundation that's designed to support you for life. So if you're serious about moving better, reducing back pain, improving your performance, or simply being able to keep up with your kids without your body holding you back, then click the link around this video and check out the Pelvic Pro Core Trainer. It might just change the way you think about core training forever.
So in terms of the work that you guys are doing, if the court's there taking, potentially a year, what advice have you got for dads who are struggling right now in terms of moving through separation? Because I definitely know, myself included, in that there's a lot of men out there that feel that, okay, well, the mother does have the rights. And maybe that's, part of the shadow of what you were talking about. My parents separated. I was living with my mum, mainly because my dad was a bit of a dick and he just kind of I didn't want to be around my dad. But also he didn't seem to fight, or he didn't kind of want me around much anyway. So I would just go visit him, and it was just a weekly kind of chat for a couple of hours. But from what I've learned, that my own separation as a dad is that actually dads do have rights. So if you could maybe speak to that a little bit, as far as what can men do to bridge those conversations and open that up to create a little bit more of equality in the care situation.
Okay, so one of the things that we need to accept is that separation is hard. It's about emotional stuff. We get into relationships with lots of hopes and expectations, or a child is conceived and we've got, high hopes and expectations. And so when separation occurs, there's a bit of a dashing of those kind of hopes. And that's really difficult. And a lot of guys aren't as well in touch with their emotions as perhaps would be good for them. So finding out about things is really important. There are some guys that haven't been enormously active parents when they've been together, and suddenly they look around at their lives and they think, what's important for me? And they realize, actually, what's important for me is my kids. And they want to be more active as parents after separation than they did when they were in the relationship. And lots of dads take a view that in the relationship, they've potentially got more income earning capacity than the mother of their kids. And so they're out there earning. And it's important years when your kids are young to get a promotion, to do some extra time, to establish yourself in your career and all of that kind of stuff. And so a lot of dads are focusing on those kind of things. And it's only when separation occurs and they look around and they think, hey, what's important for me going forward? And for them, they think it's actually my kids. And so I call some of those dads born again dads. They haven't been reflecting about what's happening about their parenting too much in the relationship, because they have lent a fair bit on the mother of the kids. And sometimes mothers feel it's rather resentful. Hey, look, I did all this in the relationship, and now all of a sudden he wants to have you every weekend with the kids, or he wants to be having, a 50-50 relationship with the kids. That wasn't what he did when we were together. And I look at those mums and I smile and say, well, isn't it good that he's a born again dad and he's wanting to focus on his kids? There are also strong views in our community that perhaps the natural parent for kids, particularly for young kids, is a mum rather than a dad. But one of the good things about the Care of Children Act, which talks about, these things and the legislation that we look at in court, is that it says it doesn't matter what somebody's gender is. There should be no assumptions made about the gender of a parent as to who should be looking after their kids. And so often it's guys that have been their own worst enemies and haven't said, hey, look, I'm putting my hand up because I want to be an active dad. I want to be spending more time with my kids. And guys need to get on top of what's happening for them emotionally. And we all need to think about what is it that we can actually control. You're on a hiding to nothing if you're trying to control your ex and know what's going on for her and that she needs to parent the same way as you do. And you can only control what happens in your space and for you. And so getting on with that is an important side of things as well. And that helps you cope with the stresses of life and separation and parenting. And so we're here to try and support and encourage dads to be doing the parenting themselves and be wanting to do that. And I think there is much more shared parenting that's happening now. That certainly the statistics which the court is showing used to be that there was about 11% of cases went to some form of shared parenting. And now we're probably looking at 30-40% of cases where there is a level of shared care that's occurring.
And that's in the last 20 odd years.
The odd years, yeah. Quite big changes, really.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing that I've noticed. I mean, I can count on one hand the amount of times that my dad took me to my sports games when I was growing up, and then, I was taking my son to swimming pretty much as soon as we could get him into the pool. We were there, and you've got a group of maybe 8 to 10 kids, and I think there was maybe one woman in the pool. So it was very much a dads and their kids time, and that's really kind of progressed as well as he's grown up. So that's really cool to see, just that active engagement. And I do think that a lot of that probably comes from us kids. It's my generation now who grew up without positive male role models around. Or even if the dads were there, they weren't necessarily that active and involved. And this generation definitely seems to be doing more to go, actually, no, I want to be there as a dad.
One of the things I'd say about that as well is that often when guys separate, they have a look around about who are the family friends, who is it that the other kids that came for play dates at their house. And often guys look around and they realize that the school friends are actually mum's friends and their kids, or the places they're invited for, barbecues or at the weekend or things like that to do things together were mum's friends and their kids. And so it's really important, that stuff that you're saying about dads being in the swimming pool with it, that you form relationships and bonds with the parents of your kids' friends. And so, you're there in the swimming pool with a bunch of other dads, or you're there at school. Do take some Friday afternoons off and go to the school assembly and meet the people that are collecting your kids' friends and talk to them and get their numbers and bring them at the weekend and say, hey, look, would Johnny like to come around and play with my kids? That's really important stuff, that dads need to be active in doing that. And if you've left it during the relationship for the mums to do those kind of connections, well, it's time after separation to be very active in establishing your own connections that way.
Yeah, that's something I've been proactive in, or at least trying to do. So since reading Stephen Biddulph's Raising Boys, he talks about that in terms of the men that you're around and forming those bonds, because it's not just your son, but it's also the other kids that are around that are seeing the dads, and they also need to understand that dads are there, essentially, and having those bonds. So with our kindergarten, we've got a small kind of group chat that's slowly growing, and just with the dads, and it's a place where the dads can have some conversations. We've got some chats going, and then, some of the dads are throwing in ideas for the long weekend that was just gone, and for meetups and all that, for exactly that sort of stuff, to kind of be like, no, guys, like we do need to do this as well. And, as I'm talking with people, it's something that they want, but it's almost like, who's the person that's going to start it? Well, if you're listening, you should be the one to start it.
Exactly. Yeah.
You just go in and just say hi, and it's I think it's awkward as well. It's simply, making friends as a parent is hard. It seems that when you have a child, your world shrinks, your priorities are shifting. You're not like friends that you would normally hang out with who don't have kids. not really hanging out with them so much anymore. You are a bit more focused on the kid. You are thinking, okay, well, I'm going to live my life and I want to do this stuff, but also I want my kid to be able to play with kids their own age. That said, I also think that there's elements there where people need to be exposed to people of all ages. So, I've got some friends of mine that have got kids that are older, so I'll bring my son over to their house, and there might be sort of a 7-year-old girl that's playing with my sort of 3.5-year-old son. And it's those kind of dynamics and stuff as well that also create some I guess a sense of awareness of the world in my head. But it's all an experiment and I could be completely wrong. But at least, from what I know, it's me as a dad going and hanging out with my other buddy who's a dad and our kids playing together.
Doing stuff intergenerationally or with other people around in the community is really important. And it doesn't need to be just biological grandma and granddad. It can be the person next door, the interactions that you have when you go down to the Four Square with the guy that's behind the counter. All of those kind of things are really important connections that you as a parent can expose your kids to. The friendly banter that you have when you go down to the bakery on Saturday morning with the people that are there or with the people that are serving you or things like that, that's all good learning for your kids. So you involve your kids in the things that you do. And if it can be involving, different generations and activities, that's great. And if you haven't got grandma or granddad locally, well, yes, you can be interacting with them these days over video and telephone and things like that. Do build those things within your community as well. I live in Raumati Beach, and one of the most wonderful things we have here is the model railway at Marine Gardens. And it's a great meeting place for young people and their kids and old people and kids. And it's all focused largely around the kids, but there's just good interaction that's happening. And you can go for a walk, or you can play on some play equipment, or you can go for a ride on the train, or you can go and smell the flowers. All of that's available relatively simply. You can go to the beach and do some sandcastles or find some shells. All of those things are just great activities. And the other thing is they don't cost a lot of money. So they're relatively egalitarian, whereas if you're committed to going to lollipops or some of the other, commercial playground type things, you can go through quite a lot of dough. Particularly if you've got teenagers that are kids a little bit older, and you take them to time zone, and you can just basically watch the zeros come off your bank balance with the kids playing there for too long.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, in terms of what dads should be thinking about doing when they are with their kids, what's more important in your experience? Like, what are the important things that kids need? Dads, of course, but in terms of when the kids are with their dads, what do the kids need, and what should the dads be more mindful of?
Well, there are some things which are just the basic things of life. A dad's busy all week with things, and maybe has the kids for a couple of afternoons or an evening meal, and then he's got the kids at the weekend. But at the weekend, there's the washing that needs done, and it needs to get hung out. And there's the vacuuming that needs to be done, a bit of a tidy up in the bathroom and all those kind of things. So involve your kids in those kind of activities. Yep, they are chores, but that's life. Life has chores with it. Now, it's not just what we're paid for. So involve your kids in those kind of chores as well. Are you going to the rugby or the football or whatever it is that's happening at the weekend? And yep, you're participating in those kind of things as a family is quite good. I've got a couple of kids that are living with me at the moment alongside their dad. And so on Saturday, they're off to rugby, and on Sunday, they're off to football. And yep, Saturday on the side of the rugby field, there's a little girl there who's playing with her football and several of her mates because dad's brought the football along for her. And at football on Sunday, his older brother, and he's got his rugby ball, and there's a few mates that he's playing with on the side of the football as well. That's going on there. So all that kind of good interaction is good stuff to do. And you've got to be cautious about going down the route of always the kind of expensive activities that need to be done. But yep, starting with the chores at home and, and a few rewards for things like that is a good way to go with your kids. And talk to their friends' parents as well and get those interactions that are happening. That's a really good way to build strong linkages and also strong teamwork, such that if I've got an appointment on Saturday that I need to go, or I'm wanting to go to a parenting through separation course on Saturday, there are several other families which I can say, hey, look, could you step in and just care for the kids today because I've got this that I'm needing to do. If your kids want to come to my place next week, that's great. So those kind of connections are really important for that. And particularly if you've got a couple of kids that are a bit different ages, maybe you've got a 12-year-old and you've got a 6-year-old. Well, that 6-year difference means that the kids want to be doing different things. So if you've got other families in the street that you can hook up some of those kids with, means that you get to spend one-on-one time with either your 12-year-old or your 6-year-old, because they've got different needs. And at times it can be quite difficult if you've got, different kids of different ages and different genders, that you can't be all doing the same kind of things together. So having those community connections is really vital. I've recently, and been a bit late with some of this, harvested some of the vegetables out of my garden. And the neighborhood kids have loved coming and helping with that, getting stuck in there to harvest my yams that are ready at the moment. And there's a few beetroot that are still there. And they're delighted to go home with a bit of beet, silver beet and, other, things, kumara that we harvested a few weeks back. Those are really good experiences for kids as well.
Yeah. Do you see parents actively making those connections and still having those conversations in terms of being active and going, hey, I've got to do this weekend. Do you mind looking after the kids? Or is that
definitely. And that's part of the connections which in Kids Needs Dads we're actively trying to build, so that we buddy up guys with other guys that have got kids that kind of age, so that they can actively interact with each other and do things together, and they can look after each other when they need some additional support.
Yeah, fantastic. Hey, just getting back to the mediation, the separation stuff. When relationships and communication start breaking down, and you've got a dad that's now, as you mentioned before, that they've now kind of realized, well, actually, what's important to me? Well, my kids are important. I want to do this, but the mother is, just being, I guess, sort of holding things back, or not even coming to the table in terms of communication, or just absolutely just stonewalling and just, this is not happening. What steps and what pathways are available for dads to take, and what would be the best recommendation?
So what we do know about separation is that separation hurts. And somebody that's been incredibly close to us, that we've shared a whole lot of experiences with, that we've had kids with, and now all of a sudden it's not the same. That relationship has changed. And research indicates that probably women drive more separations than guys do. And so a lot of guys feel, well, what's going on? They're surprised about the situation. They feel a little bit left because she's kind of gone cold on the relationship. And then it can lead to conflict. And conflict is always bad for kids. And it's pretty bad for the adults involved as well. So one of the messages for situations where there's conflict happening is that having a high standard of conduct yourself is always a good idea. You can never be wrong in doing what's right. And even if the other side is doing things wrong and annoying you left, right, and center, if you can try and maintain a high level of conduct, then that's going to be good for you and it's going to be good for your kids. And it might feel like you're getting kicked in the teeth, repeatedly, and that can be the situation. But if you've got a high level of conduct, your kids are going to experience that and they will observe what's going on. And as I say, you can't be wrong by doing what's right. So having a high level of conduct and how you interact and behave, being trustworthy, doing what you say, trying to be fair is always a good way to go in that. The other thing is get support for yourself. Have somebody who you can discuss things with. What do you think about this idea? Talk that over previously so that you've got, a kind of neutral friend. We need both supportive people that are on our side, and we also need people that can challenge us and help us work through ideas. And both of that's important there. So maintain those friendships and don't play the ostrich game where you just put your head in the sand. Ask for help. there is plenty of help out there, and Kids Needs Dads wants to be part of that help as well.
So obviously mediation's not something that you can, it's not like court, right? So if you're going through the court process, but as you've mentioned, the court process might take 12 months. Or could you maybe explain the differences there?
So, yep. Okay. So there is both informal mediation and formal mediation. So informal mediation might just be that it's grandparents that are assisting mum and dad to work through some issues. It could be groups like Kids Needs Dads, which are informally assisting things. It could be that it's the church minister or somebody else that's having some input to try and help mum and dad talk together. So it's informal mediation. And then we've now got a system of formalised mediation, family disputes resolution, FDR it's called. And the government puts money into that, and it's now a free service which is offered to people with their issues regarding care of their children. And so that's a good way to do that. It's much better than court in that it can be relatively quick. You can normally get to the mediation process into a meeting, say 6 to 8 weeks' time. So it's much faster than court, and it's got the possibility of you resolving things yourself. And one of the things that we know is that when parents agree and feel they've had input into decision making, decisions are much more likely to stick than if we leave it to a judge or a lawyer for child to suggest this is the way it should be. And if parents don't feel they've had a role in that, well, often it doesn't stick very well. So mediation is a really good way to go. Probably about 20 to 25% of cases go to some form of formalized FDR mediation. It's one of the things that surprises me because I deal with lots of cases which are pretty high conflict and pretty difficult. But research tells us that a whole lot, in fact, the majority of couples that separate sort things out themselves. They might not sort them out well, but they do sort them out themselves without the need to go to court, without the need to go to FDR mediation. They sort things out themselves. And if that works for them and their kids, I think that's good. What I don't like to see is where dads decide, look, it's all just too hard and I'm going to walk away. Because I think that ultimately does harm their children as they grow up themselves. Kids need to see a good model of both mums and dads active in their lives. I often say that after separation, the best parent for kids is to have both of their parents active in their lives.
And so let's say mediation's occurring. What should fathers expect before they walk into the room?
Okay, so mediation is a difficult process. If we've got one person and they start, I'm trying to put my hand in the shot, or they start here and the other person's got their position there, mediation is going to find a middle pathway between those two positions. If one person starts and moves their position significantly, well, you're still going to find a mediated solution somewhere in the middle. But be cautious about those initial concessions that you make in mediation. One of the other things about starting mediation is start mediation by talking about your kids. What are they like? What are the things that they do? What's funny about them? What do they find difficult? What do they enjoy doing? So getting parents to talk about their kids, you'll often find that you actually do have a lot in common and you do see very similar things about your kids. And so when somebody else is seeing similar good things about your kids and the way that you see good things about your kids, and they are expressing that as well, that always helps the mediation to go better. And the other thing is work in the realm of the possible rather than, absolutely trying to get what you want now. A lot of people come and talk to me and say, I'd really like to get to some kind of shared care, a kind of 50-50 arrangement at some stage. And then they kind of get that, well, I want that now, not in the future. I want that now, and that's all that I'm going to settle for. And it might be, well, okay, let's settle for something that might be a little different than 50-50 at this stage. and then see how we can change that going forward in the future. Mediators, courts, lawyers aren't going to be very keen on, with very young kids, particularly kids that are breastfeeding, arrangements which are having them away from their breastfeeding parent overnight. That's just the reality that dads have to suck up at that stage. But it doesn't mean you can't be significant in your kid's life. And things get really difficult sometimes when dads need to be in different locations as well. When my own son's oldest was very young, he needed to go away and was training most of the weekday out of town. And that was really difficult for him because he was really enjoying being a parent. And then his work requirement meant that he needed to be away for a lot of weeks from his newborn daughter. And I was really surprised at how well they did at video calling, and that even though she was only a few months of age, she knew who dad was and she interacted and she could cope with him on a video call. And that was really good. And video calling can work when there is a supportive other partner who's helping young kids with video calling and things like that. It's quite difficult if your ex is not being cooperative to cope with video calling and developing a distant relationship with your kids. That can be quite a challenge. But again, it's about persisting with that step-by-step stuff and just making small gains. So you don't be afraid of small gains, because any gain's a good gain. And even just holding the ground that you've got at the moment and things not getting worse and time being diminished on a parent is always a very slippery kind of slope.
So I've actually got a couple of questions in from some of the guys in the community. So one of the guys has mentioned that he's currently sort of 5 nights out of a fortnight and would like to get to 6. What would be the process for him to do that if the mother was being a little bit difficult on that and being kind of putting their foot down, saying this is just not going to happen?
Right. It can be very difficult. And I'm not suggesting that there are magic solutions to these things. It can be very difficult. And the status quo, which has been established, can be a bit hard to shift. So just holding the line and be saying, what would I like? And this could be what happens at school holiday times. Are you sharing the school holidays so that half of the school holidays are spent with each of the parents? If the other parent wants to be difficult, then yes, it's going to be difficult to achieve those kind of things. The important thing we need to think about with parenting our kids is that each kid is an individual. Even if we've got identical twins, each of those twins are different than the other. They have a lot in common, but they also have differences as well. So looking at what's in the best interests and welfare of our children, we need to look specifically at that child and that child's situation. So be seen by the other parent to be doing all of those things which are important for kids' lives, that you are supporting their education, that you are providing nutritious food and cooking food with your kids. Cooking is a great activity to do with kids. That kids are getting regularly bathed and things like that, that there is not the accusation that in one house there is a recurrence of lice that happens, or that kids are not bathing well, or they're not changing their clothes as frequently as they might be at the other house. This is to some extent about your ex better than anybody else does, and making sure that you can cut off some complaints at the past and not get those complaints coming, because you've already identified what it might be complaints are going to be about, and putting your very best foot forward and then saying, why not more time? And what say we have more time when the spring comes and we've got daylight saving, and why don't we extend some time there? So with daylight saving, we've got more evening hours. So why couldn't I have an extra evening hour or an extra after school time? And then why couldn't that extra after school time become an overnight? So those kind of things are there. And it's also interesting that when a dad is very active in putting his hand up to head towards a 50-50 kind of arrangement, the other side realize, well, actually, it's pretty good because not only am I getting time parenting, which I enjoy, but I'm getting time off parenting, which I enjoy as well, and puts a different smile on my life and allows me to do other things as well. So when a parent is able to trust the other parent is doing a good job of the parenting, that's going to be a way to go about it. So, yep, sometimes it's just about how do you do the hard yards to encourage the other parent that things are going well for you at your household, and why shouldn't the kids have more time with you, as well as the argument for why should the kids have more time with you, which can be on a fairness and equity basis. And if things are going well at your house, you'll find that your kids will be pretty good advocates for spending more time with you as well.
So it's really ensuring that you've got the good quality time. You're, essentially keeping up with the basics, right? The foundations. Are they healthy? Are they fed?
Yep.
Are they warm? And then getting to know them a lot better. Let's say you've covered all of those things, but there's differences in opinion. And I think this is probably one of the big things in the separation world, right? And for example, you've got the dad who's going to dad in the way that he wants to dad, or that he believes is the way to dad. You've got the mum that's going to mum in the way that she's going to mum. And maybe there's differences in the way that that's going. And so, in this context, where there's why shouldn't we? And then let's say there's a difference of opinion and the mother is saying, well, because you do this thing and I don't, that's not something that I want our son to be around. And the dad's like, yeah, but this is, maybe to your point before around, well, this is my job, or this is the thing that I do. This is something that they can know about me and they can enjoy. So, if you've got one party that is just strictly saying, well, you need, unless while you're still doing this thing, then this thing for the child is not going to happen. How do we navigate on that bit?
Best place to start navigating on that is to be sitting down, writing some pros and cons why you think there should be, a movement your way. And so you're getting what's going to be the opposition on the other side as well. Talking that out with a mate is a really good way to go. This is what I think, they will respond with. This is why I think I want to do that. Now, it could be that somebody takes a view, well, look, I'm a delivery driver and I've got a small truck and I'm, cruising around town, and, it may well be that the kid loves to come for a half day in a truck every school holidays, but it's going to be a very rare kid that wants to come 5 days in a row on dad's delivery truck in the school holidays. So that's where you do need to think about what else it is you're doing. Maybe you need to encourage the kid and pay for the kid to go into a holiday program. Maybe you need to be encouraging the kids to spend some time with grandparents. Maybe you do need to be encouraging the kid to spend time with the other kids next door that are doing such and such for the school holiday. So that you mix and match these things and you sit down and you plan out things. And yep, there may well be, strong arguments one way or the other, and there's not any movement. And so that is when you might need to take things to family disputes resolution, to mediation, or it could be that you're going to need to take things to the family court to resolve those kind of issues. Again, that's get the support of a group like Kids Needs Dads and talk over those things and get strategies so that you can look at your specific case, your specific kids, and what's in their best interests and welfare.
And similarly, there's another dad in our community who's based in Wellington. He's with a new partner. He's got a young kid, a young daughter, and then he's also got an older son and the son's with his mum down south in the South Island. So they're separated by land and water. And he's kind of going down once a month to visit his son. You mentioned it before around with mediation, just dads just don't give up on the mediation. But relationships are hard. Relationships, they take a lot of energy. And so if you're low on energy and the mediation process feels like it's stagnant, how can dads bridge that gap? How do we get the dad being more involved in his son's life while there's such a big distance between them?
So parenting at a distance is a real challenge. There's no doubt about that. And it can involve a lot of mileage. It can involve a lot of costs. It can involve a lot of flights. And it's a good idea that dad is going down to where the child is and knows the child's normal living environment. And it's also important that the child comes to be with dad in the environment that he lives with, meets dad's friends, meets dad's new partner, meets siblings, half siblings that might be from that relationship, does meet the uncles and the aunties and the grandparents and things like that. The Care of Children Act says that it's important that children maintain a relationship with both of their parents and their wider whānau. And by wider whānau, they're also meaning those people that are important to mum and or dad. So yes, including the next door neighbours, including the church community, including the sporting communities or things like that mum or dad may be involved with. And the law talks about preserving and strengthening those relationships. So that's the legal points that you need to be arguing and following through with if things are going to court or if things are at family disputes resolution. But yeah, it's not easy. I've seen parents that have bought 2 copies of a book so that a child's got a book at their house and dad's got a book at his house. And they both grab the book and they can read the book to each other and they can turn the pages. And if the book's got some animal characters or things like that, well, they've got some puppets and dads might have sent some puppets down to the child. And they can, again, be telling the story with their puppets or things as well, such that there are good ways for them to interact even at a distance, so it's a good time. And it may well be that it's actually, dad needs to plan. I'm a teacher by trade, in a similar way to a lesson plan is planned. What is it that they're going to do with their 10-minute telephone call with their kids? And have they got an activity which might be focused around the book or the puppets? Have they got stories which they're talking about what's happening with their little sibling there? Has dad got some funny videos that he wants to share?
Yeah, right. Well, like Allan, when it comes to mediation, many dads tell me that I'm scared to ask for more time because I might lose what I've already got, particularly if they're in a high conflict situation. In your experience, how common is that fear?
I think it's a common fear. The important thing is, what do you do to counter that fear? And have you talked through the realistic nature of that fear? If you are concerned about losing time, why is that? How do we look at assessing the quality of contact you're having with your child at the moment and putting your best foot forward to continue that quality and improve that? So again, linking up with a group like Kids Needs Dads and talking over with some of our dads care workers and some of our more experienced, peers within Kids Needs Dads can be good ways in which you can look at that. There are some dads that do need to take stock of what is happening with their parenting. The fact that you are a dad doesn't mean that your kid is always going to want to spend a lot of additional time with you, particularly if they are kind of 12, 13, 14, getting up there. And of course, kids, when they are 16 years of age, the court basically says, we don't have jurisdiction over teenagers like that. They can vote with their feet about what contact they have with mum or what contact they have with dad. And so it's important that in the early years of parenting, you need to build those strong relationships. And if in doubt about your strength of your relationship, get some experience on board from more experienced dads. Talk about what's going on for you and what's going on for other dads so that you share with peers how you can together learn from each other and improve your quality of parenting with your kids.
Yeah, there's some great advice. Again, the community stuff, right? Getting
Yep.
getting out and having those conversations. What rights do fathers actually have in New Zealand?
Okay, so when I first separated, we had the Guardianship Act, and the Guardianship Act was about parental rights and things like that. These days, we have the Care of Children Act, and the Care of Children Act says there is a paramount issue for all kids, and that's what's in the children's best interests and welfare. And that for parents, there are obligations and responsibilities. There are not rights for parents. So in the family court, they're looking at what's good for kids, not what's good for parents. And that's the way it should be.
So just to clarify that, that's the same for mums and for dads. So mums don't have
Absolutely.
more or less
Yep.
rights than dads.
Yep. So the Care of Children Act says that gender is not important to who should be caring for kids. And it also says that what's gone on in the past, that's kind of adult stuff, needn't be critical in caring for kids as well. So if somebody has had an affair, that doesn't mean that they are the bad parent and should be having the minority of the time because of that, and they should be continued to be punished for things like that. It doesn't mean that if they are a parent who has spent a lot of Saturdays or Sundays working because they were attempting to work on their career when they were together, that they can't take a new pathway as well. So that the past conduct of a parent should only be taken into consideration where it directly impacts about what should be happening for a kid at the moment. Kids don't need to know and shouldn't be knowing about whether mum or dad had an affair and that was the final straw that ended to the breaking of a relationship. They shouldn't know that mum or dad are arguing about child support issues, because those are adult issues and they shouldn't be issues that kids are being exposed to.
Yeah, 100% agree. It was, I mentioned earlier around the visiting my dad. That was a big conversation piece that he would land on me every Thursday, was around the child support stuff. And it was just, like,
You as a kid can't do anything about it. And it
no,
just is the way it is. Now, child support is a difficult and vexatious topic for both sides. One of the things that I would say is that kids cost money. It takes money to care and raise for kids. And we do have a rough and ready system in our Child Support Act, but it is a taxation act. It's the one area of family law that doesn't look at the welfare and best interests of kids. It basically says, here's a formula, we're going to apply the formula unless there are very exceptional circumstances, and there are ways that you can go about addressing those exceptional circumstances, but it's not easy. You've got to show a situation outside of the norm, and you've got to show a situation which is special in some way, so that it's not just that your kid needs to go to some ballet lessons and there are some minor costs about ballet lessons, that a day-to-day parent might say, I want some more child support. Ballet lessons would be a pretty ordinary kind of thing to do. But something that might be outside of the ordinary might be that this kid's got a potential orthodontic costs of $8,000 or $9,000 coming up. And it may well be that a child support admin review officer is going to say, well, let's take that $9,000 and chop it in half, and parent A will pay half and parent B will pay half for that. And we can reflect that through the child support collection system.
So what is the child support? Because I know, myself included, that I know that there's a lot of dads that are, again, it's that misconception stuff, right? Like a lot of dads, it's well, I'm the dad, so therefore I'm paying child support, when actually it's not necessarily the case, is it?
So there is a lot more shared care these days. So in terms of child support, you have to have your kids more than 2 nights a week on average. That's 28% of the nights or more, before there's going to be a reduction in the child support that you pay. And that's a significant hurdle, because even if you've only got your kids, say they come to you on Saturday morning and they're with you Saturday evening and they're going back to mum on Sunday afternoon, well, it's only 1 night a week that you might be having, even though you've got all day Saturday and all day Sunday where you've got the costs of entertaining kids. And Saturday and Sunday entertaining tends to be much more expensive than Monday to Friday entertaining of kids. That can be viewed as quite unfair to people. But the child support formulas and things are difficult. And one thing I would say is, if you are considering applying for an administrative review and asking IRD to look at your special circumstances, is take advice before you make your application. Because the way those admin reviews go is that once you've got a decision, if you've got a decision against you, it's going to be very difficult to overturn that decision at some stage in the future. An earlier decision is going to affect the same matter when you go back to perhaps ask the same question again next year. If you had an adverse decision against you in 1 year, you're going to get that adverse decision against you the next year, basically just because the review officer says, oh, well, I'm going to roll with the decision that last year's review officer made. So get some help before you make applications there, because a lot of people shoot themselves in the foot with their own application.
In this whole co-parenting and separation piece, what mistakes do dads commonly make?
They don't focus on their kids enough, and they focus on the argument with their ex. Control what you can control, not what she or the other side or the grandparents on the other side. Now, if you are feeling, marginalized, you're not sure what's happening with the kids' health care or things like that, well, do you know who their GP is? What's the GP practice they're going to? Have you spoken to that GP practice and asked for a copy of the kids' notes? Just like at school. If the kids are at school, are you getting the school newsletters so that you can look and you can see that their class is, doing presentations this coming Friday afternoon at the school assembly? And could you possibly get yourself there to be there when your kid and your kid's class are the lead class for providing that school assembly stuff that's happening? So that you know when there is a cross country that's happening at the school and what time it would be good for you to be there, such that you can see the kids out doing that, so that you know what's happening about the school fair and you can be looking to volunteer alongside some other parents with some activity or something that's happening at the school. Dads can unfortunately just be too laid back and not put their hand up and say, I want to be involved in that. You need to often push yourself forward so that you can be there for your kids.
Getting back to the co-parenting situation, let's say the things have been going well and they become hostile or they become high conflict. Can they improve? And if so, what helps to rebuild trust?
Yep, well, you've got that in one. It's about trust, isn't it? So what has led to the breakdown in trust? Is it possible that you can look to forgive what's gone on, because we can't rewrite the past? How do we start from here and go forward in building a way of trust? I've got a dad at the moment who says, oh yeah, I stuffed up, last week, and I stuffed up a month ago, and I stuffed up 6 months ago. And how come they just can't get over that and realize that we're not all perfect? And yes, I have stuffed up, but surely I deserve to be forgiven for that and moved on with it. Well, the other side's view is this guy is just unreliable and that past behavior is likely to reflect new behavior. What is it that you are doing differently? And often it's a very good strategy. How do I reinvent myself to be a more trustworthy co-parent, to be a more trustworthy dad, such that what I say is what I do? Don't overpromise. If anything, underpromise in what you there and overdeliver what you are providing. And the other thing is that at times you just need to bite your tongue. If you don't need to say it, if it's not going to be helpful, then don't say it. The old adage, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And if it's not meeting those tests, then you bite your tongue on those things. The other thing is that you might need to be schooled by other people with how you go about this in your text messaging or your emailing or things like that. Compliments to your ex or to the other side may be tough, but if you are able to say, thank you for supporting our kids doing that. And I really love that hoodie, and I really thought that she looked wonderful in that new hoodie that I purchased for her. And then there is those other small little things, like nothing annoys the other side more than you get the kids on Friday and they come to your house, and at your house there is an accumulation of lunchboxes because you don't get the lunchboxes back on Friday, or you give the kids some money to buy lunch at school on Friday. And so at your house, there is 6 or 7 or 8 lunch boxes, which the other side have been purchasing to replace the gap which they found in the school bag when the kids came home on Monday afternoon. Or the shoes which, came, or child desperately wanted to come and show you the new toy that they'd been given for a birthday or something like that at their mum's house, and it stays at your place. Sometimes it is worth an extra trip round to her house and just say, I needed to return this toy because I really loved it that Johnny came and shared this new toy with me, but here it is so he can play with it when he's at your house this next week. So those kind of things about being considerate as well. As I say, having a high level of conduct can never be wrong.
Allan, just as we start to wrap this up, I'm just wondering if you could sit down with every separated dad in New Zealand, and I'm sure you probably have, but what's the one thing you'd tell them?
Parenting is wonderful. Parenting can put a smile on your face. Parenting puts a smile on your heart. There is nothing that makes me happier than seeing my son, who is 35, and the wonderful job that he's doing in parenting his kids, my grandkids. There's nothing that puts a smile on my face more than seeing, my daughter and her husband and the wonderful parenting that they're doing with the little one that they've got. Parenting is a real privilege. All kids are different. And so just getting to know those kids, and there is something about our kids, our biology, our DNA, and they will put a smile on your face. So that really is the joy of parenting and the joy of grandparenting, and also the wonderful joy of grandparenting that you can walk away and say, hey kids, you're doing a great job. I'm going to leave it to you because I'm off to do some of my own stuff. And very shortly, my wife and I, we're heading off overseas. And it's going to be a big strain for us not to be every weekend grandparents and a couple of calls and things each week going on for us. But it's our secret plan that eventually we hope to bring the kids for some of the overseas trip with us in the future, because we're looking to go and plan activities that we might want to do in the future as well.
Right on. Allan, look, it sounds like you've definitely earned that holiday, and I'm sure that all of the men that are listening, if they've worked with you, then they'll be saying probably it's about time, Allan, that you took a holiday. In terms of the meetups, how do people find them? Are there meetups in every city in New Zealand?
We've got meetups at the moment in the Wellington area, Christchurch, Bay of Plenty. We're looking to get some meetups, and there are some plans in place in Auckland. And the other thing is that we've got a Zoom meeting that happens on every Thursday. And we've also got, for newly separated dads, a Stepping Stones program, so that there is a 4-week course for newly separated parents. Try and do that work, because meeting with other dads is really the best way to learn how to be a better dad yourself.
100%. Yep. Totally agree.
Yeah.
All right, Allan, thank you very much. I will let you get home and get packed for your holiday, bud.
Good.
Enjoy.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.